So welcome. This session, hopefully you're in the right session. We're doing it on balanced recruitment. It's not going to be, we have some resources that are available on the IDRC website that are way more thorough than what I'm going to share today. I'm going to give you an overview and let you know kind of where to go to find that. And so in the chat box, if you have any questions, you can feel free to ask questions. If you want to unmute yourself, you can also unmute yourself and ask questions during the presentation. So let me first show you where these resources are. So you can kind of see on our website what I'm going to reference today. You know where to find it. So if I can do two things at once here. I'm not very good at talking and doing two things. So here is our website. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jessica Castaneda. I work as the project director for IDRC. Sue Henry is also on. Sue is part of the, she's the director for the lead state. So she is my boss. So I don't know if you want to say anything, Sue. She's waving. She doesn't have to, but if she wants to. Okay. So let me check and feel free to put any questions you have. Oh, no problem. Let me make sure that you guys can unmute yourself. Need to. So I don't know how that works. I tell you what, I'll put allow participants to unmute themselves. All right, so you should be able to unmute yourself as you need to.
I was able to. Thanks, Jessica. Good morning, everyone. We've all been to more or less an opening session. Got lots of good information. Thank you very much, Jessica. That was very interesting, the information that you provided, and always good to hear from the Office of Migrant Education staff. And just really looking forward to a great day today and glad to see so many people participating.
Well, welcome everyone. So it looks like we have about 100 people on right now. So when you go to the website, I'll go ahead and throw this in the chat box in case you haven't been to our website. If you're brand new, this may be one of the first things that you've been to, but we try to put most of our resources right, easily to find on the top of the website, as I can see. Sorry, get into this. Okay, so here's the website. We just redid our front page. So if you're brand new, if you haven't looked at it for a little bit, we have our learning portal, and the resource that I'm going to share is right there, but we have some brand new portals for states. We have a learning portal that is a student and family learning portal, so kind of an instructional site, which we'll talk about later on during the Institute. We have an agriculture portal, which we'll mention today, and a resource portal. So where I'm going to go to is right here on this top, this first little link. It opens up. Right now my computer's slow. If you scroll down, we have something called the Balanced Recruitment Training. And so when you open these up, these are modules that you can share with staff yourself. You can take it yourself. You can kind of, if you only want one of them and you don't want to listen to all of them, you can. They're below at the bottom. We have all the PowerPoints. So if you're a trainer and you want to take this and modify it, you can do that also. But at the very beginning, actually it's farther down, we have an assessment that staff can take. And if you open this up, basically the idea is all of us have a comfort place that we like to recruit at. So if you want to put in the chat box, where is your favorite place to recruit? If you could only pick to go to one place or two places, what would it be? So go ahead and put that in the chat box. And so this assessment, I'm going to go ahead and throw it in the chat box also, is given with the idea that a recruiter could take it kind of personally themselves and think about where they're comfortable at. And so in the beginning, it's kind of asking a recruiter, hey, in the last 6 months, how much of your time is spent in these different areas? Visiting farms and agribusiness, visiting farm worker housing, you know, actually going out to the local sites, visiting enrolled families. Like, where do you spend your time with? And then we have sections about how comfortable they are in different areas. So are you comfortable speaking to a farm business owner? Are you comfortable speaking to a large group of workers? Are you comfortable speaking to workers by themselves? And then looking at housing. I've been with recruiters that say, I don't go to housing. In order for us to really truly be balanced, this assessment takes us a look at just kind of how our comfort level in different places and to help us identify where is the area that we're probably not as strong. And so just looking in the chat box, we have probably all different mess. We got agencies, we have schools and staff, companies, farm worker housing, H2A, parent events, community events, schools, community events, housing, agribusiness, schools, primarily nationwide, schools is where we're the strongest. Where we're probably the weakest is actually out in the fields with agriculture businesses, what we see, what IDRC sees. So this assessment is for everyone to just kind of take a look at where you like to go, take a look at how you plan your time. I know Pat mentioned in the first session about how important it was for people to have an actual plan of what they're doing and how they're using their time. And at the end of the assessment, it asks recruiters to really think about where's your strongest area, where could you have some growth, what's one area that you need support in? Maybe you're not even sure how to approach a farm or what to do with that. And then what can you do to make your ID&R more effective? And so the tools that we're using today are based on 4 different sections: working with the schools, working with farms, fisheries, forestry, and agribusinesses, canvassing housing, and working in the community. And recruiters generally have 1 or 2 strength areas where they spend most of their time. But nationally, we will never raise the numbers until we can make sure that we're thoroughly working in all 4 of these areas. So the presentation materials that I'm going to share with you come from these 4 different areas. These materials were developed by our work group. We have a training work group that is, we have members from 26 different states that are all members of different work groups, and they provide input on different areas. And so these were the collective ideas of all of us on the best way to work with schools, best way to work with farms, practical ideas for housing in the community. And so that's what I'm going to share with you today. So if you have any questions, like I said, feel free to share those in the chat box or unmute yourself. So from the chat box, it looks like schools is our strongest, and then community events, a little mention of housing, a little bit of mention of agribusinesses. But this group is probably typical of most of the groups that we have of recruiters that if you're housed in the school, that's probably the most comfortable place that you are. And so we've created this to really help recruiters kind of self-reflect and see what they can do, and to not just say, hey, you should be working in these 4 areas, but to say, hey, you should be working in these 4 areas, and here's some things that you could do in these 4 areas. So we're hoping the states will be able to use these resources, modify them, change them to how it's most effective for them, but really to kind of help you support and expand your ID&R efforts. So we have here, let me check and make sure no more comments. It says for MEP programs to be successful, it's necessary that they thoroughly canvass through balanced recruitment efforts. This involves canvassing housing, working to recruit in the community and develop partnerships, working to develop partnerships with farms, fisheries, and agribusinesses, as well as really thoroughly working with schools. So we're going to ask you a few questions here in a little bit, but these 4 areas, I want you to just think in your mind right now, where, or if you're over a region or over a state, where do you think your strength is? And then can you identify some things in your weak area that could actually, ensure that you would kind of get into that area? So we want you to be able to use those resources, but we're going to go through each one of the 4 areas. So in the community recruitment section, we talk about really why community recruitment is important, how you can locate places where you can find migrant families, how you can really start looking at the community groups that you should work with to try to build relationships, how you can organize the information, really kind of plan your visits and outreach, and then ideas for actual interactions and interviews that you have. So in the farms and fishing area, sections that we have, we're looking at how to do visits to farms, fishing, and forestry, looking at how they qualify, how to build really an existing list of those businesses, and how to prioritize when to visit, and also the information that you need to gather. Some states are really good about doing good recruiter reports. Some recruiters have no real reports that they have to send in. So if you don't have any reports, what should you really be gathering so that you can continue to really almost kind of build a database of the farms that are in your area? And then for the housing area, we're looking at resources that exist right now to help you find housing locations, different types of housing visits. There are several different ways that you can do that, and tips for you to build trust the moment that someone opens the door. And then schools. So, really working with those schools, understanding how it's important, help to identify the places that you can work, who can give you the best data, how to organize your information. We see where some staff don't get any surveys, for example, of possible eligible families, and other states get so many that they have a pile and it takes them 6-8 months to really go through. So how can we organize our ways that if we're getting data that we're using it quickly, and who can we really network with the school to improve? And so There's a comment here that says some people say strengths, farms and schools need to improve housing, non-seasonal, employer-based, and community. I feel like everyone kind of knows the areas they need to improve on, and hopefully these ideas will give you some things that, a direction that you could go in. So we talked about the assessment, and we talked about all 4 areas. So working in the community. Those of you that feel like community is really one of your strengths, if you want to unmute yourself and share kind of one of your favorite places to work in the community, or put it in the chat box, feel free to share that, because some of you, this is your strength. So does anyone want to share something as far as, where they work in the community or why that's their favorite? Any comments? And if not, that's fine, but if not, put it in the chat box. So I'll take that as not quite yet. So it says here, working in the community is a component of a successful migrant program. Migrant families live and work in communities. I mean, years ago, I was the statewide ID&R coordinator, but I was also recruiter for like most of the state. And so there were only myself and like 2 other people. And so I would go to Walmart and I could gauge how well I had gotten out there by how many people I knew in Walmart on a Friday night. And so I'd walk through and think, oh, I don't know them. And I'd try to figure out how to talk to them. Not my favorite thing to do. It's very uncomfortable, but it was effective. I could talk to them. But there are certain places that you can go, like I said here, community events, Walmart, thrift store, flea markets, things like that, that you can get out and get where people are. And so it's not always possible to find them at home, at school, or at work. So all of these areas we have to have in our mind that if we miss this area, we are missing families, because we will never find everyone through the school, never find everyone at work. We will never find them just wandering around the community and just through our partners. We have to be deliberate in this. And so as you're driving, as you're out in the community, you're always looking for resources, places that people can offer you, agencies that can offer resources for families, and referrals. So sometimes people say, well, I'm not sure where to work in the community. In your mind, you always want to have who has resources that I could share, who would give me referrals of possible families that might qualify. So you're thinking of these normal places that families will work, go and visit and see. So you have your, rainy days, they're going to the laundromat, they're going to the grocery store. But like several of you said, your health department, you're working at, going to these community events. Dora says, walk downtown to do recruitment, post our flyers and laundry. Rosa says, I go to my kids' baseball games, at the stores. As you are out in the community, migrant farm workers, if you have a population of farm workers in your community, they will be in some of these places. Magdalena says, I enjoy visiting churches and often get great leads in larger groups. I have sat through many church services. Sometimes they'd say, yeah, you could talk to people after the service. And so it's like, okay, I will sit through the service. And so you sit through and then you get to talk to people. And then a lot of times you don't have to sit through it again. They'll let you come and, once you build that rapport. Maria says local workforce centers, free and low cost healthcare agencies. There was a question, what if you do not live in the community you serve? Well, even if you serve, in a different area, you have to spend some deliberate time out in that community. So part of the time needs to be identifying, like several people have said, where are the clinics? Where is the health department? Can you get your information out in places that migrant families are going to frequent and visit? I was in Arizona and they said that they always made sure at this particular dollar store that they had their flyers there and they worked with the manager because they knew that people came and got their soap and their shampoo and their shower curtains when they first came at this particular dollar store. So I thought that was a good idea that they, took a little bit extra time to try to do that. Raquel says notes in church bulletins, often free of charge. That's a good example of just getting the word out, talking to different pastors, different people that are going to have, again, they're going to come in contact with the people that you're trying to come in contact. When I first started about 20 years ago, they had this thing in the OME manual that said, you want to build your recruitment network. Like, how big is your network? Who are your eyes and ears out in the field that would let you know, hey, Jessica, someone just moved in. Do I have those people or have I not taken the time to build that? And so you want to think, who are the people that are going to let you know what they've seen out in the community? So here it says community recruitment consists of places like churches, health clinics, tax offices, employment agencies, and many more. It can also be your stores. Maybe it's a Mexican store or a store that's offering Maybe you have Somali, we used to have a huge Somali population. And so there were certain places that people would go to buy meat. And so we would put information there. It says a recruiter needs to be able to identify places where migrant families frequent often, as well as places that offer resources or could provide referrals. So Kate says, Facebook and WhatsApp are a great way to stay in contact with families and H-2A workers to build that network. Huge example there. You sign migrant families. If they see that your services are good and that what you have is, well, they will help you be that network. They'll help you know what's going on out there. It says when you cover a big area, papering those remote locations with pull tab flyers has worked well for us to build presence in key places such as Latino stores, laundromats, break rooms, etc. Very good. Elizabeth said barbershops. So get out and collaborate with your agencies and to figure out what's going on. So very good comments. So one of the things that says here, it can be helpful to make note of the places you pass as you're out in the community that would be good to visit. You always have that in your mindset. You're always looking. Spend some time researching different agencies in the community that offer resources to migrant families that are currently working with farm worker community. So Sandra says, I work through health center office and get them to post our flyers to get referrals, churches, laundromats, grocery stores, the mall, etc. So you see, canvassing your community and what you have. It can be helpful to go and visit these locations, learn about them, go see what they do, figure out how you can work together, keep good notes, and always follow up with something that you said that you were going to do. Romana says, after COVID, there are so many places that do not have a bulletin board anymore. Well, there are still windows and doors, and a lot of times people will still let you place that, or people have gotten better about electronic kind of bulletins, like they use more of those resources that are out there. So I think we've improved on that. I would also say that flyer that you post, make sure that it is marketable to the community that you're going to. Sometimes we keep the same flyer. It's our migrant ed thing, and it's really meant for families. And when we go in the community, they can look at it and be like, okay, make sure that you put the materials that you have, that it's marketable to the population that you're trying to reach to. So make sure you have the right posters. So we used to have one that said, want to learn English? You might qualify for a program. And if you do, we have resources. And so it never said anything about migrant. It's say, if you work in agriculture, call us. And they would call us, and we had books that we would mail to them or we would drop off if they qualified. And so that was an eye catcher for them. But maybe something in school or somewhere else needs to be as your child struggling in school. So think about the message that you want to have out there, and think about the flyer that, maybe it's to a farmer, that you want the farmer to work with you, or you want the health department to work with you, and you want to make sure that the materials that you're putting out there are helpful. So here is just some things to have in your mind: laundromats, grocery or ethnic stores, which we talked about, health clinics, departments, Head Start off programs, employment offices, agriculture extension offices, adult education, WIC offices, after school programs like extra programs that offer tutoring, crop insurance. So some of these things are not what you would obviously think as a partner, but they may have data for you. They may have part of the people that you want to talk to, they already talk to. Chamber of Commerce, police departments. You'd say, well, why would I work with the police? The police may know where mobile population, where's the easiest place to get rent. They know those kind of things because they canvass. And so you can talk about, where they think, newer people might live. Department of Labor. A lot of times they have specific programs that might do some outreach in the community. So comments, we have build relationships with crew leaders. They've worked in the farms for a long time and they know lots of starting information. Ada says, I share with families the QR code for the referral tool. Migrant Head Start programs have good referrals. So you see, these are places that if you're effectively canvassing and you're letting them know and you're building these relationships, they can give you a heads up. A lot of times they won't give you names of people, but they will post your flyers, or they will, if a family agrees, pass your information on. So if you don't do the work for them to even be helping you, of course you won't get any referrals from anywhere. So I do have a new resource that is for states. Some of you may have seen this. I'm going to go ahead and put this into the chat box so you can see it. So one of the things that we felt might be helpful for states is, sometimes when you're out in the community and you find a new family, they have questions of, hey, do you know where there's a low-cost clinic? Or we're really in need of, some help with food. So what we did was create a portal that you can click on and anyone can access any state. And we tried to find searchable websites that would give you the information for the state. So let me make this bigger. You can actually see it. So if I wanted to know where 4-H was, or if I wanted to know where adult ed is in Arizona, that I could click on one of these links and it would have kind of information about the state program. And then I could click in and learn about everything that exists, in my particular community. So we did a thorough search of information that we could find for every state. And so we have everything from adult ed to Catholic charities, churches, consulates. So if you click on the churches, for example, there's a directory and you can see all the churches by different towns. And so you could know, hey, these, I could try to reach these things. So these are all searchable sources from everything from dental to driver's ed to eyeglasses for Lions Club, jobs that are available, food banks. So these could be people that you're reaching out to build partnerships. These can be resources that you're sharing with families. So it's not really designed for the migrant family to just go in and find their own unless they're pretty savvy online, but it's designed that you as a recruiter or you as a supervisor could go in and know, hey, here's all the Head Starts in Arizona, or maybe you have someone that's in your state that's moving to Texas and you want to tell them of a resource when they show up. You can go in here and look up information for any other state, and it all exists here and it's available for everybody to use. So let's say you get on here and you say, my state is California and we have this really good resource that you don't have. Just message us, we'll add it on there. And so this is just, or maybe you find a link that doesn't work anymore, let us know, we'll try to replace it and find a new one. But this exists for every single state. And so the idea is if we want you to really feel like balanced recruitment is something important, we want to give you resources that you can have in your hand to share with families. And then you can also kind of look for partner agencies that you might be able to work with. So this, again, to find on our website is you go to the homepage. I may not be sharing this, right? So let me see if I can share it. You go right to the homepage and scroll down and you'll see it down below, right here on the front. So if anyone has any comments, feel free to make those. Okay, so going back to where we were. So, that's kind of community recruitment. So now we're going to switch over and think about schools. So schools, we really feel like should be a multi-level approach. This should be something that's, we're really looking from the state down. We're not, just thinking that the recruiter needs to go out and just work with the schools. So all programs should be developing this multi-level approach that to really work with school districts. So this should have responsibilities for the state level, for the district level, and for the recruiter. So if you're a state supervisor, you can think about how you can actively be working from the top down to make it so that when a recruiter shows up at a school, or maybe they don't need to show up at the school, but that you have a system that ensures that you're working with all of your schools across your states. We find that states work very well where migrant programs are, but they often do not work super good with states with programs that are not getting migrant funding. So we want to change that. You want to make sure that you're actively looking from the top down. All school superintendents should be aware of the migrant program. All Title I programs directors should be aware of it. They should be informed of what the program entails, what the responsibilities are. And then it can be helpful for there to be an assigned liaison. In a lot of school districts across the country, there's an assigned McKinney-Vento liaison. And so some states will only have a district contact if they have a program. You want to have an assigned person if you have the ability to make these changes at the state level, someone who is assigned to be your liaison for the migrant program, even if you don't receive funding. And this would be a contact. It could be the same person. Both the McKinney-Vento person is also helping with migrant. These people should be trained on the migrant MEP, the eligibility requirements. They should be trained on what to do if there is a child identified or if they think there is a child. Just make sure the districts know what is available to MEP children, even when there's no funding, such as free lunch. Alejandrina says, I've gone to many schools and they have no idea of MEP. The challenge is if you show up as a recruiter and I say, hey, I'm the migrant recruiter, most of them are going to say, I can't give you any information unless I know from the state down that you're actually somebody I'm supposed to talk to. So you want a coordinated effort from the top down. That's, when I worked in Tennessee, they gave me a letter from the state that said, this is Jessica, she works for us, this is what she does, this is what she can request, this is why she needs to request it. And so when I would reach out to a school, I could give them my letter and then they would know, and it would have the name of our state director so that they could contact her for any questions. And it was at the state office. So if you are just going around and nobody knows, and you need a better approach to kind of from top down and bottom up so that they're aware of it. Someone says, we have collaborated with one of our biggest urban school districts. They gave our recruitment coordinator a login to the district student portal. We're now able to screen all incoming students to the district, see what district they came from, how long they've been in the US, whether they've attended school in the US prior to their enrollment, et cetera. So that's a perfect example of, you know, why you want to coordinate with them to be able to see. So good practices here, it says ensure that all students are identified in the state. I know of a few states that have decided to just do identification recruitment in only a few counties. And our charge is to make sure that we are working across the whole state and identifying all possible migrant kids. So you want to make sure that you have, we've got some comments here. It says we have a data coordinators reach out to the school districts when the COE is approved. They share the migrant student information form and ask the migrant liaisons at the schools to complete the information on the migrant student information form for those migratory students. So some states, for example, on the minimum data requirements that we need for M6, they have a form. As soon as the child is enrolled, they let the school know, hey, you may not have a migrant program or not, but this is a migrant student. This is the data we need. And they can try to get those elements that they can't get in other ways right directly from that school district. So just curious what funding source would pay for those liaison contracts if there's no Part C funding. So that is completely how your state sets it up. Like Tennessee, we were the most underfunded program in the nation. We didn't have money for them. And we just said, look, this is part of Title I. This is a program in Title I. Everyone should be aware of it. These are the requirements. It's required for, you know, for all states. And so we would say, hey, these are the requirements for migrant ed. And so whether you have a program or not, we have to identify them. So we have these forms that have to be filled out. If there is a migrant student in your area, we need someone making sure they're getting free lunch and they're able to, we get the data that's required. And so we never paid a cent. And it was just part of their requirements through Title I. That was our state. Your state may say there's absolutely no way we can do that. And that may be fine, but you've got to have some sort of, some sort of way that somebody is helping you try to identify those kids. And like Josiah mentioned, maybe it's just access to be able to then identify them yourself. But there are ways that, not being that it is part of a federal program, that it's already required for states, then you can kind of, figure out your best way to work with districts. It says, what is the best way to reach schools that have never had migrant children? In my area of Pennsylvania, there are a lot of schools who will not give me the time of day. I get a few every now and then, again, but they generally do not follow through filling out referrals because they assume no one will ever qualify, no matter how I explain the program. There may be 2 or 3 kids in my area with school age, schools in my area with school age MEP kids. So I think that's the top down approach. That's someone in your region or your state is helping get the word out to districts to see why it's important for them to work with you. And then you on the bottom are trying to, try to get that information out to others. It says, with educating staff at schools, it is difficult to get them to want to learn what MEP is because they equate migrant with immigrant and they think that they know what that is. So that'll require, like I said, again, that approach, really educating them that this is not immigrant. This is, and sometimes I've seen it done really well where states will promote what the migrant program is doing. Maybe you have a summer program, maybe you do a leadership institute for high school students where they will send a newsletter of, hey, this is what migrant ed is doing. And then they'll ask the schools to partner with you, rather than the schools have never heard anything about you. They've never seen anything you've ever done. And you're trying to convince them how they need to work. But they try to showcase efforts that have been done and try to get them to see the value in working with you. So that can be helpful. It says, MEP programs should be extremely thorough in their approach to finding eligible migrant students, and schools are an important part of this process. Don't assume those districts don't have any migrant students. Make sure that you know by ensuring that all schools are filling out needed surveys, have an MEP liaison who is aware of the eligibility requirements, and that all school superintendents are also aware of MEP. So Allison says we have a short 3-page PowerPoint that she sends to school personnel that they're not familiar with MEP, then offer to meet with them to talk about it. So kind of fronting that, loading that information first so they know what it is, they can see some of the benefits, and then you reach out. So email can be very powerful. You can get out and you can send out and say, hey, ask your state, someone from the State Department of Ed to work with you so that they know kind of how you can, get that information out to the school districts. Anyone have any comments that they want to make on what you think is really key in working with schools? Okay. All right, next slide.
Jessica, I can just
Yes.
something that Chris and Chris, she's our assistant director to the migrant education program. A couple years ago, actually pre-COVID, she put it out there. She's like, let's hold a workshop just to see who signs up. Put it out there. We went through the Department of Ed, they put it in their newsletters and they sent out blast emails to school districts and just, okay, this is a workshop about the migrant education program. And we had a really good turnout. That time it was in person. We had a really good turnout, even though it was during the summer, which, was surprising that people signed up, but it was good. And since then we have workshops throughout the year, and now they're virtual because of COVID. But we have school district personnel signing up, and we hold these workshops and just an overview of the program, and then those federal requirements that yes, you don't get funding. However, these are requirements. You'll get a call from us if you have a student, and we'll be asking, and then of course we share, the indicators so that they can have in their registration process. So we find out if there are students in their area. So it is a lot of educating and being persistent, but then opening up as well, for when they want to come and join us to learn about the program. It has been very helpful. The Department of Education did include that migrant liaison list on the website, on the contact list, which we didn't have before. So school districts, when we started, we had one migrant liaison on the whole state that was listed for about a few months. And then all of a sudden, it was again, the Minnesota Department of Education sending out, in the newsletters and just to different groups, superintendents, principals, like we need the migrant liaisons listed. And then, now we have a lot of them listed on that contact list. So persistence and just, getting the word out there.
That's a great example. One of our challenges was trying to make sure we got all the M6 minimum data elements. We couldn't get all of that just from the access to various databases that we had. And so we did a training at all of our Title I conferences on migrant and on districts requirements to kind of work with us, and they would come, they would show up. We'd ask districts to make sure that they sent at least one representative. And so a lot of that came directly from the state down, but you can see by offering trainings, it can be really helpful. We also would offer a training to school districts on how to work with migrant students and for regular ed teachers. And so they would then be interested in that, and it would kind of help us get a little bit more, kind of grassroots efforts with teachers being more aware of what migrant ed was. So thank you for that comment. Very good comment.
Yeah, and just a really quick one thing that I did forget to mention was the other thing when we do these workshops is we expose them to M6, the national database, and we tell them how, if you need an account for your counselors, and just, if you do have a migratory student and you need, grade placements or any of that, that comes with M6, we do offer it, and we offer trainings for M6 on, on the site. So if they need that individual training, we do offer that as well.
Very good. So we also have a comment in the chat box from Raquel with a link that you can see a new resource that helps explain the differences and open a conversation. And there was a comment that says, for brand new districts, find a person of peace in the district or building, maybe an ESL teacher or guidance counselor, and use them as an internal advocate for the migrant program. So Noemi says collaboration with all federally funded programs at all levels is key. So yeah, you really want to do what you need to educate. There's a comment by E. Taylor that says our office created a flow chart that specifically describes the difference between migrant and immigrant, what the identifying factors are, and how to properly code the students in our local student information system. So good examples there of things that you can do also. So if you're working with MEP students and their families and they have needs the school should be aware of, make sure that you can share those. One way that we found was effective was letting the school districts that we were serving kids, if they weren't serving them directly and we were serving them through an outside agency, we would have open up the lines of communication to say, hey, we have a tutor that is working with these students. Do you have any suggestions for things that you specifically want them to work on? And so we would have this back and forth between the school district and the family and the tutor. That could be super helpful for both sides. We have another comment. It says form a relationship with school secretaries and registration staff. They get firsthand enrollment of new students. An MEP survey insert in the school application is helpful as a referral. As registration gets new students, they can email the survey out to you. Very great, very good explanations. Okay, so now we're going to move on to housing. And this is another area that we really want to make sure that we specifically are working, with housing as much as possible. And so sometimes it can be overwhelming. I don't know if any of you have ever seen a trailer park like this where you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get through this? It is really important that we find the ways to really adapt to the communities that we have and make sure that we're thoroughly canvassing and we know what's happening. So it can be difficult. It says housing visits can help you locate the difficult to find students who qualify for the migrant program. You've gone to their work, you've not found them, you've not in school. Sometimes housing in the evening, and this is why it's really important to not just work an 8 to 4 schedule or 7 to 3. Housing is very good to visit on nights, weekends, sometimes mornings, just at various times, can be really important. So if you want to say something, feel free, but if not, make sure you're muted. That way I don't pick up any extra sound. Okay, so what you should look for, you're out in the community, you're trying to figure out where on earth you can get housing. Sometimes one of the things we always try to suggest is that people figure out where families move to, what places in the community are easiest to get an apartment or a place when you first come. And then when you're out visiting these kind of places, you're trying to look for signs of, things that might be helpful. Maybe you have agriculture equipment, boxes on the porch, power lines in the fields. Where I used to work, there was a bunch of processing plants. And so I could always see their boots or certain aprons would be out on the porches. And so we'd really watch for those things. Maybe some foreign language boxes on the porch or in the trash, housing trailers or housing near farm sites, white work vans with muddy tires. I was working out in New Mexico and it was super dry, but on the dairies, a lot of the vehicles that came from the dairies were all muddy. And so we would watch specifically for muddy vehicles because that really was not happening in another place. Box trucks, things that will move agricultural equipment, you can kind of, or products. So here's an example of kind of what we're talking about of getting, looking at different types of things that might be available that might give you a hint that maybe there's a family that might be eligible. And this is a picture from a porch of a family that was working for a local nursery in Tennessee because the recruiter noticed the house from the road because there was a poster of the Virgin Mary in the window. After approaching, they noticed boxes of fertilizer and agricultural products, a Rosca de Reyes box in Spanish, and a beer from Mexico. And they wound up finding that the family was eligible. Of course, this is not always the case, but it does get good for you to look. Sometimes in vehicles, they'll have, something for agribusiness that has like a tag, a parking tag, they'll have the name, and so you can check that out. But you want to make sure that you're looking around, you're seeing the kind of signs that might help you see if there's someone that would be eligible. We used to, where I live, there's a lot of nurseries. And so they're right here in the back of the truck here is a basket that when they dig the trees, they put the roots and everything inside this basket. And so we would pay attention to the type of equipment that was in the vehicles outside. And you want to get to know those crops and see, the buckets, the things that are going to be available. A lot of times there's no signs at all, but sometimes there are. So there are 4 different types of housing visits that we see that a lot of times people have. And so one is you're visiting the farm worker housing. Another one is you're looking for currently enrolled families. The other one is you're looking for old addresses. There were places that families used to be. And another one is conducting door-to-door efforts. So there, when you're thinking, what am I supposed to do with housing? Visit current farm worker housing, visit your current families, ask them if they know, see where they live, see if anyone else lives around them, visit old addresses where you used to have families, and then really canvassing places that you think might be effective. So we always suggest that you use your database, your migrant student information database, and get a listing of all the places you've had families in the past or that you currently have. And check those out. Make sure that you know where those are in the community. Make sure you visit them. Make sure that you're aware of how many people, if you have new families there, but you're not just seeing them at school and you're not just expecting them to come to you. You need to go to where they are and see what's out there. So when you're visiting old addresses, we used to have part of what we were supposed to do when we're out in the community is visit all the farm locations we've identified, visit current families and see if they know of anybody new, and then visit our old addresses. And so if I went to the old address and it was now a permanent family, I would say, take it off the list. Maybe this family says, no, we bought this place, we're going to live here. if there was a reason to take it off the list, I would. But if not, we would continue to visit those same places. Not over and over, but every year we would make sure. We also found that much of the farm worker housing in some places were owned by certain, property owners. And so maybe we tried to not just visit the apartments, we tried to get to know who owned it and see if we could get permission, but they would give us a heads up when they had new families. And so sometimes you can kind of take it a little bit deeper where people say, well, I don't want to talk to the manager. I find that it's very helpful to explain to the property manager what you're doing, why you're doing it, and then get their permission to come back. And a lot of times they'll give you a heads up once they know that what you're doing is valuable and it's helpful to their people that are staying. They'll say, hey, we'll go to apartment A4. That's a brand new family. So we could save a lot of time by getting the manager's trust and having them talk to us. So there are a few really good sites that are kind of helpful if you're not sure where to go, where you might find new families. I personally like rent.com. It's just, I like it because it lets you know you can specifically search by different, make sure I'm sharing this. I can put where I live and I can search in there, but I can also search for, might be kind of slow right now. You can actually go in and search for homes by a certain, it says you can, let me see if it lets me do the search how I want to. Let me just throw it in case it'll do. It has an allowance that you can, sorry, it's not letting me, still copying my old one. Let's just rent.com, it's not that hard. If you go here, then it'll let you do a search specifically to try to look for apartments that are of a certain range, like, certain, maybe they're 300 a month, or maybe they're 500 a month. And so you can go in there, and then they'll also let you know if there's vacancies. So some of those cheaper ones with vacancies are places will have more movement. Mobile Home Village is a searchable database that you can actually look at for all the mobile homes in your community. And there actually is a resource that is through, it's a government resource that lets you know where all the mobile home parks are in the country. And so that is super helpful that you can kind of access that. So when you're creating a plan, we always want to make sure that you can use the data that's available to you. You know what's out and about. You're looking at those places that you can visit. You're looking at those old addresses. You're putting it somewhere on a map so you can kind of visually see what you want to be able to go out and to do. And so this can be really helpful when you're also looking for housing that's related to agriculture. And so I'm going to share, kind of switch on, again, like I said, on the resources we have on the website, it goes even deeper. I'm kind of skimming and giving you some of the main points of some of these. But when we look at the agriculture side, working with farmers, one of those things we want you to do is this farm list of ways that you can figure out where are the farms in your state? Are they places you need to visit frequently? How do you organize who you talk to? How do you follow up with what you need to do? How do you keep track of what season it is? And so these are all things that we kind of talk about in this particular training. This is one that's probably more extensive than the other ones. And so we'll just be hitting on some of the main points of this this morning. Let me see. So why agribusiness are important? I think this is an obvious. We know that there's a direct correlation between where people work and their eligibility, and a short interview can really determine, whether someone's eligible. And so it's helpful to go right to the place where, whether it's the farm, whether it's agribusiness, the place where this is actually happening. So you should be finding farms and agribusinesses in your area. You should be doing research to know where these places are. You should regularly look for new things. We may have a list for you, for example, and you say, well, there's more than this. If you're out in the community, you should always find more than what just exists when you do an online search. Google's a great place to start, but you want to know where your farms are, and you also want to know what's happening with your farm. So you're trying to make partnerships with like your local ag extension agent to know what's happening in agriculture. Are things looking better? Are things really hard for farmers? What's going on? So it says here, a successful recruiter knows about qualifying agriculture, fishing, forestry, and food processing in their area. They know which businesses outsource. They know which one tends to hire migrant labor, which one are just family run. They know whether it's seasonal. They know if there's turnover. So a savvy recruiter stays on top of relevant industry news to help them update and add to their list of businesses to visit for ID&R. So you can do some searches, just local searches on, what's happening right in your own area. It's really important to keep up with that. And so once you find these farms, you want to keep information on them. What's their name? Do they have a website? what do they do? What type of industry is it? What type of labor do they have? And how often you should visit these places. So we just did a resource to try to make your life a little bit easier. And Josiah, we took your comments at one of the last trainings and took it a little bit farther to help states. And so let me share a resource that we have from that. So going back to the website, if you click on the agriculture portal, so we have the same, this is all agriculture information. So let's look at Pennsylvania, for example. Scroll down and make sure. If you open this up, there will be some information that's available that, first of all, at the beginning, that has just, let me make sure I'm sharing this. Yes, that has information on, just contacts in case you wanted to contact another state. We have a farm labor contractors list, and this exists for every single state. For our IDRC states, they have more because we actually did a really comprehensive list of all of their farms that we possibly could find. So like Nebraska, you can go on and see an additional list right here at the top. But we have the farm contractors list, and then we actually have a map for the farm contractors. All of the maps are IDRC, capitalized are IDRC, and you can see the actual contractors that are there in your state. If you click on there, you'll be able to see the information for that. We also have the H2A and H2B. So we had been using one source for our H2A and H2B, and we now, Josiah had actually suggested a link where we could get more information. We now update these monthly. So if you click on here, every single state has their H2A and H2B listings updated monthly. And this is a Google sheet that you can use. So we have the work listings right there, and then we have a map for it. Then we have the housing listings, and we have a map for it. So if you're out in the field and you're thinking, well, how do I use this map? You can actually, if you have an Apple phone, there's an app for Batch Geo. If you have just an Android phone, you can click on it, and you can use the GPS coordinates to be able to you can click on the little arrow here, and it'll give you information on how to actually find it while you're out in the field. So everyone has the farm labor contractors, the H2A, H2B. We also have the mobile home parks. All the mobile home parks in your whole state, you'll be able to see. We have a map for that also, but we also have the listings. Maybe you don't want the batch geo maps and you just want to pull this down, put in Excel and put it up in Google Maps, you can do that. We also have the USDA egg, poultry, and meat inspection list, the updated one. They actually update this weekly, so you can check it out and see if there's new ones. Many of the states, we've done a freedom of information request for the hemp list of whoever is selling hemp in your state. And so some of them don't have addresses on there, and some do. And so you can go in and kind of access the hemp map. This is the one specifically for Pennsylvania. And so each state's a little bit different on how much hemp information they give. Then there also is the State Department of Agriculture website, and then relevant agriculture associations and websites that we could find for your state. If you click down, there is also the Ag Census Query tool. We love this tool. I don't know if you guys remember, some of you have probably been to trainings we've done before. We love this tool because we've linked on here how many workers are in your state, and you can go in and choose a county and click and say, okay, I'm going to look in Beaver, Pennsylvania. You can update and it'll tell you how many ag workers are in that particular county. So every single state has this. And then if you click on the last one, we have your county profile information that you can actually look and see the whole state. And then you can actually also go in, I need to add a link, and you can see it by county. So let me check the chat box, see if there's any comments. Because I've used this and it's helpful with recruiting, I began sending letters and phone calls to see when I can visit. So one suggestion, I am not a huge fan of sending letters to like farm and agribusiness or doing it by phone. You can, I think the letters is a good idea if you're like, hey, we're going to be in your area, just giving you a heads up. But sometimes with calls, if the farm tells you, hey, we're not interested in you coming, you can't go anywhere with that. So you want to have a strategy to figure out the best way that you can kind of work with them. So this exists, this resource exists for every single state. If we can find more lists, we have a lot of freedom of information requests out there. If we can put those on there, we'll get there. But the idea is, like OME mentioned, you're supposed to have kind of a recruiting map, have a visual locations of where farms are. And this is our kind of way to try to help states get as much information as you can, specifically with that. So feel free to use that as you see fit, and hopefully it'll be a helpful resource for you. Let me go back to my slides. Let's see. I need to go way down where I was, and then I'll go forward. So these kind of things, like so this tool is available for everybody. The H2A is also available for everybody. Make sure that this is sharing the right thing. I don't think it's sharing the right thing. The H2A is updated monthly. So on the top will always be the yellow. If you just add that, Google file to your Google Drive, it'll be updated. That link will stay the same, and you can see the new yellow ones right there at the top. That will be the newest ones for your area. We also suggest that you do, to know your research of your area of what's happening, you use a Google alert that will let you, if you just go to google.com/alerts, it'll let you go in and set up a news alert for any kind of information that you'd like to receive. So maybe I want to see McMinnville, Tennessee nursery news, and anytime there's anything about the plant nurseries, Google will send me, a notification that there's a new news article about that. And so that's an easy way that you can kind of learn more about what's happening in your area without having to spend tons of time researching. You'll just get an alert when there's something related to it. We also suggest that you really work with your agriculture extension offices. You get to know them. You try to see if you can build relationships with them to know if there's farm trainings for farmers, whenever there's pesticide training, or there's a farm bill, or there's things that farmers right now, there's like payments for different things. These are the guys that work with them specifically, and they can really help you know what's happening in your area. Same thing with farm service agencies. Tomorrow we have our opening session is going to be done by the Department of Agriculture, and we have 5 or 6 really interesting programs that migrant programs can work with, and they have good information. And one of them is the farm worker housing. So they're going to join us tomorrow and share kind of insights on how you can work with their local counterparts. And so we want to continue to try to work as much as we can with the Department of Agriculture, and the Farm Service Agency can give you a lot of information for your particular area. With our IDRC states, we created really extensive lists of possible farms, and we did that through Manta. Manta.com is a small business directory that will give you information on the address, the information of the business, the number of employees, how much money they make. And so the best way to find this is you can go to Manta.com, and you might find some of the information, but I like to do, and just in Google, Tennessee, Manta.com, agriculture listings. And so then something like this will come up where I can see all the different types of agriculture, and I can go in and see those specifically. And so it can be helpful that way. Farm labor contractors are on that resource, that agriculture listing portal that we have, but you can also go directly to them. You can Google just migrant and seasonal farm contractor listings. They update this frequently, and they actually have those, phone numbers and addresses that you can find them and know where they are. Same thing for the USDA meat and egg poultry processors, which we added on there. This is where we get it from, and they update that periodically too. So we want to make sure that, as you find these places, sometimes you go to Manta and it mentions that there's a farm, maybe it's a feedlot, and then you show up and it's a house, and you think, this is not an agriculture place, I'm not going. A lot of times small businesses will not have an office, and so they may have workers, but they might not have an official office. And so don't make the mistake that just because an address looks like it might not have anything to do with agriculture, go there, stop, ask, talk to them, see who they know. A lot of times they'll tell you exactly how you can get in contact, or they may say, look, this is, we only have 2 workers and it's my 2 sons. And then to not have to worry about it. So I'm running short on time here, but to finish up, we want to make sure that with all of the areas that you're working with, that you have a plan, that you've got a plan to work in the community. You've got a plan to know how you're going to work with farms. And you're really looking to ensure that you truly are balanced in those areas. You're keeping the data that you need to collect of where you went and how it went, who you contacted. And I absolutely love to have a visual map of where I'm going. And so if I'm going to be out in an area, I want to know what's there. We do have a training. I don't remember which day it is, but I'm doing a training on the Google and on Batch Geo on how to create those maps, and we'll actually work specifically with states on how to do those. But when you're planning field visits, it says, take a look at the geography, look at the businesses that are in the town in the same road. Like, don't drive from one part of your county and drive through all of these other things and not stop. Like, especially now with gas being crazy, be real organized. And so you can be in your community and visiting schools, visiting housing, visiting agribusiness, and you work on a section of the map. You work on just those areas and you canvas everything. So and then when you go, you gather the information that'll help you for later. Like, when's the last time you visited? Have you heard anything about turnover, what they're doing? You know, keeping track of that information. And then thinking that if you're going to go to this farmer, you have to know his needs. You have to know those things that could be helpful. And so you've got to be able to have the right kind of approach, the right kind of things to say to that specific farmer or agribusiness. You know, what do your workers have knowledge about? Maybe you're sharing about local resources. Maybe you have some resources to help workers learn English. Maybe they're interested in obtaining a GED, or maybe there's just some job site training that they might be interested, that you might be able to do a little short job site training and then talk to everybody. So you can kind of see these things can all be really, really helpful to check out. I'm getting a little bit of feedback. Okay, so it says, do the farms need help translating something? Does the farm need COVID, safety materials? Those kind of things. You're just thinking about how you're going to sell the program. And the last thing I want to share is we have an electronic survey tool that is available for everybody to use. And this is just a tool for a quick referral. Maybe the farm says, I have a worker that might qualify, and they can put the information in. You can find it on our website. It's right there on the front. I'll see if I can pull it up real quick. If you go back to the front of the website, scroll down until it says provide a referral here. When you click on that, there is our referral system. This is available to all states. So every single state can go ahead and have an account, and it's free. They basically put in a quick referral, and then it gives a notification to the recruiter that, hey, there's something, there is a referral for a family in your area, and they know that they can go ahead and contact that. We also have a bunch of different types of pamphlets, brochures that you can use, that you can, even if you don't use the electronic survey tool and you want to just use them, they're available in PDF. We can also give you the Word version if you want to modify it. We do have a QR code that local businesses can use to just fill out that survey. And it's a tool that we hope is helpful for everybody. So we just want to make sure everyone knows that that's available. So that's all that I have. I will go ahead and stop recording.